Have you ever encountered someone for the first time, made physical contact through a handshake, spoke their name aloud deliberately to cement it in your memory, and then moments later, it evaporates, completely erased? You're participating in the dialogue with apparent engagement, while internal alarm bells ring relentlessly. Who are they? Who are they? Yet here's what strikes you as peculiar. You could perfectly describe their apparel. You recall they mentioned a pet, or visiting Greece, or expressing dissatisfaction with their career. You remember their facial structure, the quality of their laughter, perhaps even the slightly awkward comment they shared. Yet the name vanished, as if it never registered. Most people blame themselves for this. They suspect they're negligent or self-focused or possess defective memory capabilities. However, this interpretation is largely mistaken, and understanding the genuine processes operating within your brain will end the self-criticism and expose it for what it genuinely represents. Let's begin with something that appears almost too straightforward to be accurate. Names represent, from a psychological perspective, among the most difficult categories of information for the human mind to preserve, not due to complexity, but because of their nature. A name represents what cognitive scientists term an arbitrary piece of data. It contains no direct relationship to the individual before you. Consider this. When someone indicates they're a chef, your mind instantly has substance to process. Kitchens, ingredients, butter, that savory aroma. Your mind constructs a narrative framework, anchors it to something tangible, associates it with existing knowledge. However, a name like David or Amelia or Thomas provides your mind with no meaningful content regarding the individual. It's merely a sound. It hangs suspended without framework, without detail, nothing for the mind to fasten to. This represents an established discovery within neuroscience literature, sometimes termed the chef-chef paradox, stemming from an insightful experiment demonstrating that individuals were significantly more inclined to retain that someone's employment was chef than to retain that the identical word functioned as their family name, Mr. Chef. Identical word, dramatically different retention rates. The reason? Because one integrates into a framework of associations, whereas the other exists as an isolated designation without context. And this becomes considerably more intriguing as the instant you're presented to another person, your consciousness isn't primarily concentrated on recording their name. It's concentrated on something considerably older and more fundamental, assessing whether this individual poses risk, captures fascination, demonstrates reliability, appears appealing, represents danger, or holds irrelevance to your circumstances. This seems hyperbolic for a casual greeting at a celebration, yet your consciousness processes both scenarios identically. It engages identical evolutionary mechanisms regardless. So while you're deliberately attempting friendliness and attentiveness, another portion of your consciousness quietly examines expressions, physical positioning, vocal qualities, subtle cues regarding interpersonal dynamics. This type of analysis demands substantial mental resources. Regrettably, names get deprioritized. You're not experiencing failure in remembering. You're accomplishing something different entirely, simply not the objective you intended in that circumstance. There's additionally a darkly amusing contradiction present in this situation. The precise instant someone communicates their name is frequently the precise instant your consciousness is most unprepared to absorb it. Examine how exchanges truly transpire. Someone says, "Hello, I'm Nicole," and in that specific moment, what does your consciousness engage in? It constructs your reply. It considers your impression, your expression, whether your grip contact registers as excessive or insufficient, whether sustained visual contact seems appropriate or excessive. Neuroscience identifies this as simultaneous processing, and it's damaging for information storage. You cannot thoroughly absorb fresh material while simultaneously organizing your personal presentation. It parallels examining a novel address marker while simultaneously executing a challenging parking maneuver. something must surrender, and regrettably, the address marker typically gets overlooked. Yet, let's venture further, because there's something profoundly human regarding why this recurs for so many people, particularly those with heightened interpersonal sensitivity or heightened empathetic responsiveness. Individuals who struggle with name retention frequently demonstrate heightened perceptiveness regarding interpersonal dynamics. They're evaluating the environment. They're identifying whether someone appears uncomfortable, distressed, or defensive. They're interpreting hidden significance. This kind of interpersonal consciousness provides substantial advantages in multiple contexts. However, it competes directly with the portion of consciousness managing factual memorization, like names, specific dates, numbers. Your consciousness essentially operates within restricted mental capacity, a confined mental theater, where it maintains a restricted collection of components simultaneously, customarily assessed at roughly 4 discrete elements. If that theater operates processing interpersonal condition, spoken inflection, narrative content, practically no mental capacity remains available for a name, which honestly carries minimal emotional significance inherently. Furthermore, this warrants gentle yet forthright acknowledgement. Overlooking someone's name rarely reflects indifference. Frequently, it represents the contrary. Individuals who most frequently misplace names are regularly those who maintain maximum engagement within exchanges themselves. They're not disengaging. They're completely attentive, simply prioritizing the incorrect information. Fascinating contradiction, isn't it? You're occupied with authentic consideration, authentic interaction, that the singular component everyone connects with acknowledging someone slips past undetected. There's additionally an illuminating societal dimension meriting discussion. Throughout numerous Western organizational contexts, instantaneous name retention functions practically as a respected characteristic, evidence of appreciation, intellect, even managerial capability. Dale Carnegie authored that an individual's name constitutes for that individual the most delightful auditory experience available. Substance remains in that observation. Individuals genuinely respond when you recall their name. However, this societal expectation simultaneously reinforced a troubling myth, suggesting that overlooking a name signals some personal failing. Actually, numerous historical traditions have depended considerably heavier on designations, responsibilities, affiliations, or narrative components rather than distinct names for structuring interpersonal memory. Our fascination with promptly recovering a name following initial interaction represents in numerous respects a somewhat recent societal standard, not some inherent requirement of interpersonal conduct. Currently here exists something that might genuinely astonish you. The mind doesn't overlook names due to memory deficiency. It overlooks names because of how cognitive storage operates fundamentally via connection and recurrence, not singular exposure. Examine your closest associates currently. You didn't retain their names following initial listening. You encountered their designation repeatedly, likely extensively, connected to countless occurrences, witticisms, disputes, dining occasions, reciprocal understandings. Cognitive capacity doesn't function as a storage container where you position something once, then retrieve it afterwards. It functions like a pathway through wilderness. The greater frequency you traverse that pathway, the sharper and less temporary it becomes. A name stated individually at a lively event represents a single weak impression in thick flora. Obviously, it disappears. This doesn't reveal deficiency in you. This demonstrates the pathway simply lacks sufficient repetition yet. Additionally, something fundamentally encouraging appears in investigations about how consciousness accesses information, revealing that recognition surpasses retrieval performance practically consistently. This explains why you might completely lose someone's name, yet the immediate someone pronounces it aloud, you respond, correct, absolutely, That's accurate. Your consciousness hadn't genuinely eliminated the information. It simply couldn't retrieve it without assistance. This manifests since retrieval demands your consciousness investigate and reconstruct, whereas recognition merely requires matching input you're provided. It's comparable to producing literature from blank parchment compared to choosing appropriate responses from options. One represents dramatically greater difficulty compared to the other, and names practically invariably occupy that greater, blank parchment classification, particularly shortly following meeting someone. Therefore, if you've harbored assumptions throughout existence that you possess ineffective memory, or regrettably, that you're somehow inattentive or dismissive because names vanish from you, I encourage you to consider a more compassionate, more precise interpretation. Your consciousness isn't defective. It's distributing resources distinctly. It's emphasizing interpersonal responsiveness over informational preservation. It's utilizing archaic protective mechanisms in contemporary interpersonal interactions. It's coordinating greater mental operations during those opening moments of meeting another human than practically any other segment throughout an ordinary day. Additionally, it's functioning with a designation, a name, that remains inherently conceptual, solitary, and lacking significance till you grant it opportunity and recurrence to establish significance. Moving forward, when you misplace someone's name moments subsequent to hearing it, perhaps instead of experiencing mortification, you can provide yourself compassion. You're not inattentive. You're functioning naturally, operating precisely according to how consciousness has consistently performed, emphasizing sensation over specifics, engagement over accuracy. Additionally, truthfully, isn't that somewhat comforting? That the particular characteristic you've experienced embarrassment regarding throughout existence might represent demonstration of how completely, honestly absorbed you maintain with individuals. In case this supplied increased gentleness regarding your consciousness currently, express it below explaining which name persistently eludes you. I assure you, you're definitely not exceptional. Furthermore, in case you're intrigued by additional honest examinations into the overlooked, regularly misunderstood components of cognitive science, persist here, since substantial substance exists for investigation regarding that magnificently imperfect consciousness residing within you.